As quilters, we don't always know exactly what quilt it is we're going to make next, what it's going to be, what the colors are, the pattern. But yet there are other times when you see just the right idea, the right inspiration. You know exactly what you want. And now the trick is to make it become that. And this is that for me. I'm Leah Louise from Inspired Quilting by Leah Louise, and I received some new fabric in the mail. I was so excited to see. And they're beautiful sky and sand colors and sort of that soft, breezy beach kind of inspiration. And I thought, that's the quilt I want to make. And of course, that meant using those new batiks along with some wonderful low volume fabrics and prints that just correspond and coordinate well and carry off the color scheme that I'm looking for to get that feel. And I am really excited how this quilt turned out. We are using a couple different blocks. You'll notice we're doing an alternating pattern. One is an 8-point star, the other is a 9-patch. Both are very easy blocks. The best part is, notice how those seams fall. When you put a 9-patch next to a star, you don't have any matching seams, so this goes together really quick. And the blocks are large. We're talking 16-inch blocks here. So this is a wonderful quilt to practice working on your points if you haven't quite mastered that yet, and getting all your corners square, because it's a large and easy quilt and it's so incredibly forgiving. And you can go with any color scheme and get a beautiful result with this. So I'll put some information down in below in the description with the block sizes that I use, the different shapes and cuts that I use. This is the this is the No Ways Flying Geese. I know I won't do another one for a while, but I've just had so much fun with this. And look how different this one looks compared to the others. So it's a lot of fun to try new patterns with new fabrics and new ideas. But do take a look in the description. I'll also put the information in there about the Fat Quarters that I use, or at least the ones in the Batik collection. And there's always something or interesting to take a look. So see what's down there. But in the meantime, I want to show you how to make this beautiful quilt. So join me. Let's go ahead and see what we need to do. I do hope you're going to subscribe, and please give me a thumbs up if you like this tutorial. I'd love to have you join me again. All right, now let's go quilt. Well, when there's new fabric that arrives at the door, that generally means there's going to be a new quilt to follow. And I received my new package this week. I wanted to show it to you. I wanted to share it with you. I know ahead of time what's coming. I've seen it online, but when you don't see it up close and personal and can touch it, you don't necessarily know exactly what to expect. So I have an idea of what I want to do. This is called Sand and Sky. It's sort of a beachy, watery color combination, and it makes me think of, those balmy breezes and the light blue skies with a little bit of clouds. And so I'm thinking low volume, and I may be wrong, but that's kind of the idea where I'm heading. And I had some beachy prints that I bought a while back, and I have a bunch of my low volume fabrics out here, and some pastels, some low volumes, some more low volumes. So I'm kind of thinking low volume, but let's see exactly what we're going to do here. So as you know, I get my Fat Quarter package of the month from the Fat Quarter shop. And yep, Sand and Sky. So let me go ahead and open this. Take it out of the plastic, because these colors look really, really wonderful. And so there's a dozen in here, and that gives me a total of 3 yards. Let me fold it this way. Oh, look at that. Oh my goodness, I have to do this way. That one I absolutely love. Isn't that pretty? So it's teal with some greens and a creamy background, and a similar print that's not quite exactly the same. It's a bit different. In a peachy kind of golden yellow, and this has the greens and that goldy sort of tan color. And this brings out more of the tans. These are really pretty. I like these. And you know, they're working really well on the low volume end of things because they have the low color value. The color is there and you can see it, but it's not deeply saturated. So you have the color, but it's not overwhelmingly so. That white background really tones it down a lot. And see where the colors kind of fade, where it's darker in areas and you know more subtle in others. This is really cool. I like that a lot. I like those different colors in the leaves and the way they play off each other. So pretty. Whoa, this is fun. Check out the circular pattern. That's really neat. Oh, these are some great, great prints. And this is pretty. I like that. It has all the colors, the blues, the greens, the gold. This will be a fun one to work with. Ooh, kind of peachy. See, we've got this bit of, at first I'm calling that tan, but I realize now that's more of a peach. Those are some pretty colors in there. Oh yeah, that's going to work out well. And see how, you know, when you get a coordinated group of fabrics like this, these colors are all integrated between each of the fabrics so that they all go really well together. Now these are the darker ones, obviously, and I may be able to use some, but I really like the idea of going with low volume because these are light and airy. I just, you know, I think of a early summer day on the beach. It's warm, it's not hot. You've got a cool breeze coming in. It feels wonderful. You're loving it. And that's kind of the color that I'm thinking in terms of this. So chances are I'm going to use this group, probably not those three, but this group here. And I want to do a patchwork, and I was thinking about doing a 9 patch, but then I also thought it could be fun to do some stars. You know, we've been doing the flying geese, which they make a great 8-point star, and a lot of you have already downloaded that tutorial. This would be perfect to do some stars, but have the stars in the lighter colors and then have the background be more these colors. Look at how great this matches. You know, not even part of the same group, but and I love these white ones with the hibiscus and the seashells. They have a bit more pink and purple, so I'm not real sure about that. But this is a quilt that's going to have, you know, a number of different blocks. They don't all have to be in this tealy, peachy color. We can get a little of these others, especially if we bring in some green. Like there's a piece of green, and maybe do, you know, a star out of this with the points in the green or something. I like when the stars are coordinated in a color, but they're not exactly the same. I don't want to go completely scrappy. Sometimes when you do stars and it's all scrappy, you can't always see the star unless you're really conscious about that contrast. Because when you're mixing up those points, you're going to get different colors will weigh differently in a quilt, and you kind of lose those points. And I want the stars to stand out here. And so I think what I'm going to focus on is create the stars in lighter colors and then create something more in the background. Now, the 8-point stars that I've done recently, they were with some K Fassic fabrics, and they were all star blocks, one next to each other. What I like doing to make things real easy is to alternate, is do a star block and then alternate with an, a solid block, for lack of a better word. It can be a 4-patch, it can be a 9-patch, whatever we want, but a non-star block. And then, so we have star, we have something else, we have a star, and we have something else. Now, these blocks that I make, these big star blocks, are like 16 inches. So that's a really good size block. So this quilt's if that's what I decide to go with. This was kind of the preliminary idea that I had in mind with these fabrics. And I think this is going to work out really well. But in between, if I use that 4 patch, each of those big blocks are 8 inches each. And I don't want something that big that isn't a dominant part of the design. And the star is where the design will fall. Those patches in between are going to be kind of background and more general color to tie everything together versus being their own pattern distinctly standing out amongst everything else. So I think rather than go with a 4 patch, because number one, we'll have 8 inch squares. Secondly, we have to match these seams, is we can go with a 9 patch. And if we go with a 9 patch, then we will no longer have matching seams. And it gives us a little more color in that block that we can mix up. So the larger star will stand out on its own because it's going to have a focal color itself. And then the 9 patch will be in smaller pieces with a lot of mixed colors, so it becomes more the background. So I kind of like the idea of working it that way. What I need to pull together are the specific fabrics. So what I think I want to do is have the center of the star be the lighter and the points be the darker, because those points are going to be set against the low volume background of the star. And in order for those points to stand out, I want them to be darker. And the center will be large, so it'll stand out just in the color by itself. So for example, I might use this as the center and these as the points, or even something like that as the points, simply because it's darker, which means I may bring some of these darker ones in to get those points dark. And we've got kind of a creamy background. So as far as the low volumes, I can easily use white because a lot of these have white as well as cream. And I have a bunch of those here. These tend to be more on the creamy side, but I have enough of them that I can mix in and use those. This is just one of my favorites. I think you remember this that we've used previously. It has all the decorative stitches, and I just think that's a lot of fun, especially, and these colors are absolutely perfect. And that's one of the Riley Blake fabrics. So we have that, and then I have some of these low volumes. Remember these batiks I did recently with a quilt? So these will work out good. These have the more of the blues, but I just think, see, look at this. These colors all really will work well together. So I'll still get that beachy look that I like, that nice, light, airy, cool, breezy sort of feel, and have a lot of interest because there's some great colors. And I like this green, so I can bring something like that in. And I saw some of these low volumes here. Like here's one with the green, has the plus in it. This one has little green speckles. So, there's some fun pieces I can pull in. And of course, this one, that doesn't really go with this because I'm not going for the red, but that is a fun one. So that's where we are. So what I need to do is pull together my stars, what I'm going to use, put the fabrics together, get my blocks planned out. And then from that, I'm going to select 9 fabrics that will be my 9 patch, because the 9 patch will each have 9 individual fabrics. And they're not going to all be in the same place. We'll switch them up the way I like to in order to get a different layout for each block. So with a 16-inch block, we can go with a couple different dimensions. If you go 3 blocks, let's see, 32 would be 48 inches wide by, so if you go 9 blocks would be 3 by 3, would be 48 inches square. If you go 3 blocks by 4 blocks for a total of 12, that would give you 48 by 64, which is a nice size lap quilt. So I'll probably go for 12 blocks, which means 6 stars and 6 9 patch. and 6 star blocks, and they're big. These go really fast, especially using the no waste flying geese on the sides for the points of the star. So some of this is going to be familiar, but it's kind of fun to do it in a completely different layout, just to, to remember that once you have a trick in your bag that you can whip out, for example, the no waste flying geese, or just a 9 patch block, you can incorporate it into a quilt in a multitude of different ways, and it doesn't look the same. It looks very different, but yet it's something you're able to do. You're proficient at it. You can whip them up quick and easy, and they go together fast, and you just kind of pull together these quilts with little tips that you learn along the way, and they get more interesting as you go, and each quilt becomes more and more beautiful. So we need to get started. I'm going to pull my fabric together. I'll stop talking. I get excited about this part. I just get all worked up about the fabric, but we're going to go ahead and get some fabric cut, and I'll kind of give you an idea where we're going here. So give me a few minutes. I'll be right back. With fabrics paired up and cut and ready to go, I'm going to show you how we'll put these quilt blocks together. Remember, there's 2 different blocks, the star block and then the 9 patch. These are my 9 patch. They're all cut. We're ready to go, but I'm going to start with the star blocks. And we use our background fabric first, which is a 9 1/4 inch square, and we cut 4 5-inch squares. Notice how there's a diagonal line cut across each one. That's going to indicate our seam allowance when we're making our no waste flying geese. So what we do on this, well, let's say we're doing it this way. We put our corner to corner right there. We sew diagonally. We come all the way across here. I always kind of lift that up a little bit. And then I sew across here, and I come down to the end. And you want to sew a 1/4 inch seam right there. And you can see here that this has been sewn on either side of our drawn line. Now, once we get to this point, we're going to cut this in half. And we want to cut right along that line. And this is going to be the first step in creating our flying geese. So once this is cut in half like this, we'll use these pieces, and we're going to create another set of flying geese with the same block. So what we'll do is take this piece here, and we're going to press it this way. And so you'll have a block that looks like this. Then we're going to take our other 5-inch square, and we're going to line it up like that. And we're going to sew along that line a 1/4 inch on each side. Now what I do want to show you is the seam allowance can get a little fussy, and it's easy to kind of veer off a bit. So you want to set your line, make sure it's in the center, so that when you line it up, for example, right here, let me show you this. When you line this up, that it's exactly in the middle. And then when you sew your 1/4 inch, you're going to sew right into that valley where these come together. And you can see right here where that sewing line is, right where those fabrics meet. And then you do your 1/4 inch. This is actually almost a little bit more than a 1/4 inch seam. And in doing that, that's going to help place your seam, the point for your seam, a bit lower than the seam allowance. By doing this, it's just going to make your assembly of the block so much quicker, because you don't have to fuss about where that seam allowance is. Now, there's a more in-depth instruction tutorial on how to make the flying geese. I'll include that link here. And once you make a couple, you're going to be amazed at how quick they are and how accurate they can be. But you need to take those first couple steps to make sure we do it correctly. Lay the first ones down, cut them in half, do the second one, sew accordingly on either side. And then once you, here, I've got this ruler, make it a little easier. Once you have this sewn, you're going to cut right there, and then you'll press this up, and you have your flying geese. And this is just so much easier than putting half square triangles together or making them individually where you have to cut each rectangle and then add 2 triangles to that. But what's wonderful about the way this works is if you take that little bit wider seam, this is going to give you a seam allowance right there that's just a bit greater than a 1/4 inch. So when you come and you take your 1/4 inch seam, you're going to be right outside that point, and you will not be cutting off the points of your flying geese. And that is something that's really important on a star block, because we want those points to be evident and to be visible. So now that we have these 4, and we'll soon have these 4 when that's finished, we're going to pair them up. And I wasn't sure. I don't want to go too matchy-matchy. I had thought at first about putting these colors together, but I'm actually going to switch that around, and I'll put these together, and I'll put these together. Now, obviously, these blocks aren't ready, but that's how the piecing is going to go. So let me show you, in order to put this block together, we have points on the top and on each side, on the bottom, so that all 4 sides have our points. And you see our star there, right? Now we take our 4.5 inch squares, of which there are 4, and it's the matching background. I wanted to keep the background consistent on each of the stars because there's going to be so much else going on in between here with the 9 patches that I wanted the star to be the focal. And so now I'm going to sew these 3 across, these 3 across, and right across here. And then I'll come back and I'll sew this long seam. So as you're piecing these, you want to watch this seam here. For example, let's say these are sewn together and these are sewn together. And now you're going to sew these 2 strips. So what you're going to do is put your block, your flying geese block, and you can see I actually got it a little bit off right there, but that's okay because I'm going to follow this point. So I'm going to line this up, and as I sew my 1/4 inch seam, I'm going to come just to this side of that point where that intersection is, so that when I open this up, my point is not going to be snubbed off. It won't be sewn off. It's going to be intact. So we will go ahead and do that on each of these. We'll get our stars put together, and it goes together very quickly. Once you get these flying geese assembled, it's just putting these blocks in. So let me go ahead and get that done, and then we'll come back and we'll get these 9 patches, and before you know it, we're going to have a quilt finished. And here are the first 2 finished stars, and they look wonderful. We've got our points, our corners are great, our points here are good, our points along the outer edges, everything looks great. So these blocks are going to go together really well. I do want to show you on the back, pressing these, I press these points towards the center, otherwise it just gets too thick to try and press and sew over. So as these are all finished, then the next thing we need to do is prepare our 9 patches. And I have 6 blocks each of 9 different fabrics, and I kind of want to mix them up. There's some whites and some creams, and let's see, we've got this kind of, got some color there. We'll do a white one. This is a bit on the gray side. Kind of spread these around. Okay, that's just really light. And let's go this way. Now, you can decide whether you want to put all your 9 patches in the same order or not. What I'm probably going to do is mix them up as I sew. But essentially we want to do a pair and a pair and a pair, and just run those through chain stitching, and then cut your thread, come back and add the third block onto each row, and then you have your 9 patch ready to go. You just do your cross seams and everything's fine. And you can press these whatever way works best for you, because remember now, we are not going to have to match up seams, which is going to make this so much quicker to put together, because the seam lines do not fall in the same place on each of the blocks. So let's go ahead and get our 9 patch put together and see how this is going to look. It's looking gorgeous so far. All my blocks are finished. These are the low volume background blocks that'll alternate between the stars. And I tried to mix up the fabrics in different locations so that they don't look all exactly the same when I'm quilting. It looks like this one ended up in the corner quite a bit, but I can turn that block around and that's fine. So we have 6 of the 9 patches and we have 6 of the stars, and I really like how these turned out. I mean, these are exactly as they need to be. They're low volume, they're background, they're low key, and they're fun to look at. They're interesting, but they don't take a lot of the attention. Whereas these stars definitely get plenty of attention. The contrast, I like the light in the middle with the darker points. That really brings those star points out so you can see the outline of the star. And then the background just sort of enhances the color a bit. And same here, the darker brown out there brings out the bit of the darker tones here, but definitely those points work great. And I just think this is a pretty kind of monochromatic, but I like how this print is much denser, so you definitely get a stronger feel for the color, and those points stand out great. Of course, these little hearts are adorable. And again here, just kind of working through. And I think we saw these 2 already. These were the first 2 that finished, and I really like that print. That worked out well. And this looks great. Kind of looks like our sandy beach. Got a little tidal pool and some sandy beach around the water. I love it. So now we put these together, and we'll have a star, and we'll have a background. Then we'll bring another star, and I'm going to do, what did I say? I have 6, so I have 12. So we'll do 3 by 4. And let me go ahead and put these blocks together. I'm excited to see how this has turned out. This is really what I was looking for. I enjoy these light, low volume, subtle colors, and it's just light and airy, and I like that. Sort of like being out on the sun porch at the lake house or something, right? And the colors are working beautifully. These stars really stand out. The low volume creates a great interest for the background, but it doesn't dominate by any means. And so we have our pretty stars, and then we have the low volume, and they go into more stars that just look beautiful. And check this out. Let's see what we have over on this side. So once I get this hung up, then we can see the whole thing in one piece. And just take a look at how, the points all worked out really well. And you'll see by the seam between the 9 patch and the star, these points where the seams intersect are not adjacent to each other. They're not close to each other at all. And so it's very easy. Look at all these threads. My goodness. It's very easy to sew this seam because you don't have to match up all this other bulk, and it sort of reduces the seam allowance. It can sometimes get bulky when you have a lot of corners coming together. But I think this is wonderful. I love the look of it. It's so pretty. I like all these colors. And, it's a nice springy quilt. And I can't wait to get this finished and See how it's going to look. Get some fun ideas for the backing. Oh my goodness. This is just so pretty. I love it. I love it. And I hope you've enjoyed this too. This has been such fun to make and to share with you and just kind of come up with something a little different with some same old blocks that we've used before. So get creative, get your blocks put together that you really like, find ways to mix and match them and work the colors together to get just the look that you want. I appreciate you being here. It's been my pleasure to share this with you. Thanks so much for watching, and please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. I'd love to have you join me for more videos. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.